The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Here we go. We are off and running. Welcome to the program. He's Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker, and plenty to talk about as the Vols are quarterback shopping again. What? What's going on with that? Pretty interesting changes in college football recruiting schedules that I want to get to, and I think it's big for Tennessee. I'll tell you why, because a lot of college coaches are getting sick of the never-ending job that is college football recruiting. I can remember, Caleb, there wasn't that long ago where coaches were allowed to take 2 weeks off during June, and that was really their only vacation, literally. And nowadays, June is one of the biggest recruiting months. So they're trying to make some changes to the NCAA recruiting calendar. If they don't, then I think you could have a serious concern, because I keep hearing from sources I talk to in the NFL and college that all kinds of coaches are trying to bounce and get to the NFL because it's now considered an easier job. So that's something you don't want if you're Tennessee, especially considering the fact that that guy, Josh Heupel, would make a really good NFL coach. Good morning, Caleb. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. How are you doing this morning, Dave?
I'm well. Off and running, and I think that is something that Tennessee and other big-time programs are worried about. And let's go ahead and dive into it. It's brought to you by AndyMasonRealEstate.com. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. They will save you thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, because Andy Mason has the best service. Andy also has the best prices. Over 40 years of experience in his office. Go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com, fill out the form, and begin your house buying or selling process. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Of all the coaches that are successful in the SEC, is there one that you would be any more concerned as a fan base that might leave college football for the NFL than Josh Heupel? I would argue no, it's not close. Nick Saban did it before, checked that box off the resume, didn't go very well, and he's old at this point. Kirby Smart, I don't think his style fits, and he's a former Georgia football player. He's not going anywhere, and he's got things rolling. As a matter of fact, I can't think of anybody else, with the exception of maybe Steve Sarkisian, who will come into the SEC, that a fan base would be like, oh no, the NFL is coming, Caleb. Is there any other coach out there that strikes you in the soon-to-be expanded SEC that you would be nervous about losing to the NFL, more so than Tennessee should be?
I would think maybe the closest one is Brian Kelly, but Brian Kelly is also a little bit older, like you pointed out. But I think those would be the top two. I would say Josh Heupel and Brian Kelly. I think Brian Kelly did flirt with the Eagles years ago when he was with Notre Dame. But I'm with you. I think Josh Heupel's at the top of the list, particularly because when you compare Josh Heupel and Brian Kelly, if you talk about the stresses of recruiting, you and I have talked about it. You don't really have to work that hard to recruit at LSU. I mean, you can just need a car. You need the university to give you a credit card with gas money, and you will find guys in that state.
Well, and then you can still be you can be Ed Orgeron and still get in trouble just in the car, because he was pulled over at a gas station when he tried to pick up one of the biggest boosters' wives, who was pregnant, and said she's not interested. But you can still get in.
Nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. Well, you need help pumping that gas. That was more like a David Letterman impression. I've been watching some Letterman lately. No, I don't know of any other coach that you covet in the SEC that could go. Brian Kelly, if he were 15 years younger, 10 years younger, I would say yes. I could see him winning a couple of championships at LSU and making the bowl. So let's get into some of these changes, because they're very significant. And also, we want to talk before the end of the program. And the reason we're not tackling it right now is we might have a very special guest before the end of the show. And we're looking forward to that because there's a young man named Jake Merklinger who's going to announce his decision tomorrow. Why does Tennessee need a quarterback? Well, you always got to keep the cupboard stocked, but I'm not sure why they're being so aggressive for the young man who's going to announce tomorrow, and he will decide Jake Merklinger out of Georgia between Georgia, Michigan State, and North Carolina. So we may have a very special guest that has some insight into his recruiting. But first, some of these recruiting changes I want to get to. Good morning to everyone. And then we had a Riley vote, Smoky Mountain Red. I'm not sure. Oh, he said OSEC. Yes, I could see Lincoln Riley of Southern Cal headed off. But just SEC, I think Tennessee would have the greatest concern of a guy that says, hey, I've achieved this in 3 or 4 years. I want to try the NFL like Nick Saban did. So a couple of different changes. So throw them at me if you can, Caleb, and I'll tell you my thoughts if it helps college coaches manage what right now is just an impossibly stupid year schedule. It's just there's no way coaches can do this for 20, 25, 30 years like, say, defensive lineman for the Vols, Rodney Garner. You just can't keep up this pace. So throw some of these changes at me, and I'll give you a thumbs up, thumbs down. And by the way, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate that. A like on the channel, and that brings more people in. So let's get it rolling. What do you got?
All right, so a few of these, the first few, I don't actually think gives coaches a break. I think it could be more stressful. So you give me your thoughts. The first one is coaches can now visit juniors in person starting January the 1st of their junior year. That's 11 months earlier than usual.
So essentially what you're doing is you're bumping up the calendar because it's already been bumped up. So June, which will come up, used to be December and January, where you would have all of these visitors in. So I think you're allowing guys a little bit more time to get to know players. So that turns into more recruiting time, but I think you get ahead of the curve a little bit. So I actually think that helps.
So you think it takes away from the stress of the December month, basically?
Yes, of trying to jam everybody in. So while that sounds like more recruiting time, I like that one from a coach's perspective.
Okay. This one's probably similar then. Contact is now allowed with rising seniors from, well, these aren't, by the way, when I say now, these haven't gone into effect. These are proposed. They're going to discuss it next month. I guess we should get that out there. These aren't official yet. But okay, so the next one is contact would be allowed with rising seniors from April 15th to Memorial Day. Right now, that's right after spring practice, before the summer, and you're only allowed to evaluate players during that time and not contact them.
Again, I think that's just so that's just an evaluation period, but you can allow contact now. I think that's just moving things up in the schedule. It sounds like more work, but I think it's more productive work. I mean, you can step right now. The problem that coaches that I talk to are having is that they have to give out offers because they're not really sure if a guy's interested or not. And they've got to keep up with the Joneses. So
not the Butch Joneses.
What's that?
I said not the Butch Joneses.
No, not the Butch Joneses. But if you have to do that, here's the problem: is that you're offering guys that you don't really know, and those are fake offers, non-committable offers. And my least favorite term is committable offer in all of recruiting. So again, I think you're giving coaches more of an opportunity to get to know these kids. Again, sounds like more work, but I think it just gives you more time in the calendar. So what's next?
Okay, so the third one is they're moving up when schools are allowed to initiate calls with prospects from September the 1st of their junior year to June the 15th after their sophomore year. So that's roughly 2.5 months when you can first initiate contact with a player.
You're getting the summer, again, moving up the calendar. I'm okay with that. I think we're getting into the stupid realm, though, big picture of recruiting guys when they're underclassmen, and even Tennessee's supposedly recruiting a guy that Caleb Giroux wrote about, or is recruiting a guy that's an eighth grader. So I think that gets into a little bit of silliness before their bodies have developed. But I get the point. Make that window a little bit bigger. So I'm okay with that. Now,
and to be fair, you can't evaluate any more about a sophomore on June 15th than you can September 1st. High school football has just started. you got like 1 week's worth of their junior year.
Yeah, but you can see a lot of growth in that summer when they're in the weight room, I would argue. To me, recruiting sophomores for the most part is a fruitless endeavor because you don't know what they're going to be. There are 10, 20% that are the Peyton Mannings of the world. I know Kyler Murray was one of those guys that we did a lot on ESPN on when he was an underclassman because you knew he was going to be that good. But for the most part, I think you're spinning your wheels. I think 10, 20% that you go after as a late sophomore in this case will probably not pan out. But if that's what they want to do, go for it. And with the early signing period, everything's moved up. So what else we got?
And then the last one, and I think this is the one that gives coaches the big break. So it's a decrease in the evaluation periods for the whole staff. In the fall, the proposal is to decrease the number of evaluation days from 42 to 33. And then in the spring, it's to decrease the evaluation period from 168 to 140. So we're talking a combination of 37 days that they're eliminating in recruiting that you're allowed to recruit. And I guess that's what the coaches really want. No, so long as no coaches can take part in this, they're all getting a break.
Right. That is the highlight. And there's no question about it that college coaches, if they're going to hang out longer in college and not go to the NFL, this would be slightly the game changer. So, I mean, the schedule right now is unfair. It's brutal. It's absolutely horrible. So I'm a proponent of all of these because even though it may look like more work, it moves the schedule up from the college's standpoint, where I think they were chasing their tails a lot because you had an early signing period, but no more contact / evaluation period. So decreasing the fall evaluation period is a big one to me too, that actually puts the rubber on the road as far as fewer days where you have to be working. I think this is all very important. Pete Thamel, who I trust, if he's reporting this as possibilities, I think they probably end up happening, Caleb. And I will say I would be all for this, and I will talk to some coaches this week to see what they think about the changes. But to me, this makes the schedule more palatable. You?
I agree. I think that's a big one. I got a question for you real quick, because I think you and I both agree that even though we know that, let's take a Dan Mullen, for example. We know Dan Mullen was not that big into recruiting, but is a great game planner. Do you think this recruiting calendar is really what did him in? Because he's not. Do you think a guy like Dan Mullen now might be able to come back into the college coaching ranks and be successful with this rollback of the calendar? Because he doesn't like to work that hard on recruiting.
You know, it is really funny that you bring that up. I wouldn't have chosen him as the symbol, the guy who is emblematic of that, but he might well be. Because he kind of hit a time at Florida where you should be able to recruit at a high level, but he didn't. Well, why not? The only reason that you could possibly come up with is the fact that the recruiting calendar had gotten so advanced and he didn't keep up and didn't like recruiting anyway. I hadn't thought of that name, but that might be the best possible example, Caleb, of a guy who's like, man, this ain't cool.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I feel like Dan Mullen nowadays, I mean, I think you and I both agree, there's no way Steve Spurrier would be coaching college with this recruiting calendar, right? He would hate every bit of it. And
not the proposed one, but the one that's in place.
The one that's in place, yeah. Yeah, the one that's in place now.
Completely 110% agree. He would have hated this. I don't know that he would have done well in the NFL because, quite frankly, he didn't do well in the NFL. So,
are there other coaches that you could think of that were great, that were like, they were great because of, I guess, a little more X's and O's, and they weren't crazy about recruiting, and this calendar just would have wrecked them?
Again, I can't come up with an example that I think even compares to Steve Spurrier. I thought he was a great example. I don't know that he would have had success in the NFL, but I think that's a very good example. I really believe that this recruiting calendar, as far as driving off coaches, and I'm not saying this because we talk about Tennessee a lot, and I'm not saying this to try to get people riled up, but I think the coach in the nation, the entire nation, that fans should be most concerned would say, to heck with this, would be Josh Heupel in 5 years from now. I mean, he's got plenty of juice and energy. He's in his early 40s now, but what happens when you're in your mid 40s? What happens when you're a little bit later. Maybe you've had some success. And once you've had that success, you think, I could work less in the NFL, make as much or more money, and make a lot of the key decisions. I want to make that move. That's exactly what Nick Saban did.
And the big selling point for that, if you're a coach like Josh Heupel, and I think this applies to a lot of coaches, it's definitely applied to Saban, is if you're a successful college coach who doesn't succeed in the NFL, you know there's going to be another college job waiting for you afterward. It's not like you're going to be out of a job when you get fired by the NFL at that point. So you don't have to worry about, there's this whole, like, don't take this job, you risk ruining your career because you're not going to last long. And then and I get that's probably a thing in the NFL, but if you're a high profile college coach, there's going to be a bunch of schools line up that will fire their coach to hire you if you were successful in college beforehand. Yes.
South Carolina would have legalized cockfighting in order to get Steve Spurrier to be their head coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. What do you need? What do you possibly need? All right. So I think this is all good. I think these are the little things that you need to root for if you want Josh Heupel to have longevity at Tennessee, which I believe he will. But, we're always in whatever job we do, we think to ourselves, could things be a little bit better? Could the grass be greener on the other side? So these are all things that I think help Tennessee maintain their relationship with Josh Heupel for not just 2 or 3 or 4 years. I'm not talking about that. I'm to the point I'm beyond Josh Heupel just being at Tennessee for 3 or 4 years, Caleb. I don't know about you. I'm really thinking about this, and I never say this about coaches. I didn't say it about Urban Meyer at Florida, Dan Mullen at Florida. I'm not going to say it about Brian Kelly. I don't think he coaches there for 10 years at LSU. Nick Saban would be the exception to the rule. But as far as the young coaches, that age isn't against them. I think Josh Heupel, I'm thinking along the lines of 8, 10, 12 years that he could be at Tennessee because of the fit. I don't think that's a stretch at all. 2 years under his belt, 8 more years. If you had to take the over under, I'll put it at 7.5. So that'd be a number of 10 total years. Would you take the over or the under that he's at Tennessee? Given his success, given his perceived love for the program, what would you take?
Yeah, I would take the over. And also, I think 10 years isn't bad.
You realize how crazy, though, that what we're saying, though, that a guy's going to be at a job for 10 years.
Oh, exactly.
And we both agree.
But the mistake, I think a lot of it's funny because the mistake I think Tennessee lucked into it. I think the mistake a lot of athletic directors make, and I want to know your thoughts on this, I think they too often sacrifice good hires because they're looking for the guy that's going to be there 20 years. And in my opinion, a lot of times, this is why I love what LSU did with Brian Kelly. They know Brian Kelly's not a 20-year head coach. You're right. He's a 5 to 7-year head coach at best. But the way LSU was thinking is, you know what? We might get 2 or 3 national championships in those 5 or 7 years. Look at Miami in the 80s. Miami didn't make one hire in the 80s. There's not one head coach that lasted more than like 5 years at Miami. But they all got a national championship when they were there. And would you not take a 5-year run with a national title over a 15-year run of success? I think this is a big problem in college athletics. Everybody wants the guy that's usually late 30s, early 40s that they think can be there for 20 years. They're trying to find him somewhere. And a lot of times you have a proven commodity elsewhere that could do better.
No, I would totally take the short. If Tennessee fans, I believe, were asked right now, you can have Josh Heupel for 5 years and win a national title, or you can have him for 10 years and win 3 SEC championships, 4 SEC championships. I think they would take the national title, but I think you're going to get both. And again, I'm the guy that's viewed, for those of you that don't know me from years ago, I'm the guy that's often viewed as a cynic. I like Caleb because I think he's a little cynical too as well, or at least realistic. Let's use that word. But I think the best days, enjoy 2022, but I believe firmly, objectively, that the best days are ahead for Josh Heupel and Tennessee. John said, sure would love to see Spurrier throw down his visor again. Meant you were getting under his skin. That's the only thing I'd change about Josh Heupel if he were just snarky. If he, after that Missouri game when he punched that one in, and if he just said, well, their job to stop me. If he said something like that, Spurrier style, that's the only thing I would change about Josh Heupel is I would make him snarkier and a smart aleck. I think that would be fantastic.
It also responded to the media some with his strategy. My favorite Spurrier thing is every now and then he would there was a game against Tennessee where, okay, so he got criticism for running up the score. And then the next year he decided, well, I got a 35-0 lead. I'm going to sit on the lead just to stick it to the media. He did that just to make a point and went away from his style. And I'm sorry, a lot of Vol fans at the time, Peyton Manning was the worst of this. Like, I'm so glad we fought back. You know, it was only 35-29. I'm like, okay, you guys didn't really fight back. Spurrier called off the dogs. Let's call it what it is.
It's very true. Josh Heupel, except for the smart mouth, is the reincarnation of Steve Spurrier. And I know people hated Steve Spurrier. I mean that as the greatest compliment ever. But he is that guy. And I don't know if he opens up and he's ever snarky again. Doesn't seem like that is going to be his nature whatsoever. But Josh Heupel's offense, Josh Heupel's aggressiveness, all of that is fantastic. Portions of the program brought to you by Azul Beer Company, xulbeer.com. Zul Beer has worldwide award-winning craft beer, a location in downtown Knoxville with panoramic views, a location in Knoxville with parking. What? Yes, they have that. xulbeer.com, zulbeer.com. And it is time for one of my favorite parts of the program, because after the late Norm Macdonald, and I love that. It is time for What the H, as we get to that right now. I'll remind you that you can download the app, and you can also, wherever you podcast, find our product, and we're out there all over the place. So What the H is now.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
I'll flip the script a bit on you, Caleb. Vols left off top 10 stadiums for fan atmosphere. What the H? Brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Vision. I got it. I can see far. I can see close. I've got my last follow-up appointment today, so I'm excited about them telling me you can see. And they'll be like, usually you go to an eye appointment, they say, take your contacts out, take your glasses off. So I don't need to. I don't have contacts or glasses because I'm in great shape. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn right there in Knoxville, and their doctors are local, which isn't the case with a lot of other people. So Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, you will love them. They've got vision centers, also cataract surgeries, and they have LASIK, like I mentioned. And I went with the monovision, so I can see close one, far in the other, and it all works out for my eyes. Love it. Okay, so Tennessee left off the top 10 stadiums for fan atmosphere. Okay. I can't stand clickbait. I get accused of clickbait, as we all do in what we do professionally. Caleb does, I do, even though I can tell you, and if you don't believe it, don't believe it. Fine. But I firmly believe, Caleb, that some of these articles that come out are purely for clicks. What you and I write, we believe in our hearts. If you bumped into us on the streets, we would believe it. Caleb told you he didn't think Tennessee would make a Sweet 16 run. He didn't. He parted from that after they did. But some of these, to me, to not have Neyland Stadium is a huge, monstrous what the H. I do not understand, especially with the season they had last year. If this is 12 months ago, fine. I got it. But did you see the light show? Did you see the fans that showed up for every single game? Not just the Alabama game, not just the Florida game. I'm going to run down the top 10, top 12, or top 10 list. Tennessee comes in at 11. And the another reason why this list bothers me is you have Ohio Stadium at 12, which I haven't been to. So I'll give you the insight to ones I've been to. But to me, Ohio State is low at 12. So I think the Buckeyes have a gripe as well. But let's focus on Tennessee. All right. And fill me up with the message board, okay? Travis says they hate us because they ain't us. Fill us up with the message board. I want to hear exactly. Do you give me one stadium that you think competes with Neyland and you think that maybe is even better? Rebecca says that atmosphere poll is the stupidest thing I've seen. That was totally for clicks. I'm with you, but it's got me talking. So I guess I guess they got me.
They got
Mr. Jones says, what other team pulled up goalpost? Mr. Jones says, that's just BS. The Alabama game was the most viewed game in the regular season. Travis says, that's total BS. I know where you guys stand. Give me one stadium that you think is close. Let's play the other side, and let's take a look at this. So, all right, here we go. So the stadiums that are supposed to be better than Tennessee, Michigan, that's stupid.
That's the Big House is the quietest place for anybody that knows about it.
I know. I haven't been there, but I've talked to many reporters that have. It's way spread out. It's not loud at all. That's stupid. I mean, stupid.
It's dumb.
Yes. Nebraska. I'll be honest with you. I haven't been there, but that to me is absurd. I can guarantee you as I go through this list, that South Carolina is not going to be on it, but South Carolina, I think, is an underrated place to play when you're in the stadium. I'd say the same for Auburn, which probably won't be on this list, but Nebraska being above so many SEC schools is just stupid. I think you almost have to tweak this when you're writing it. I feel sorry for the writer because you could do almost 8 SEC schools right off the top. So Texas A&M, I haven't been to. It's one of 2 SEC schools that I haven't been to, but when I ask people, it's just incredible, just unbelievable. So for me, them to be 8 feels low. You jump in whenever you feel the need to do so. Florida State at 7, Caleb, feels high to me, especially with the lack of success they've had.
Yeah, I think the Florida State thing, and you're going to see this with Clemson too, they're relative because I've been to quite a few ACC games myself. And for those who don't know, ACC games are horrible. They are hard. I mean, they are notoriously bad. There's a reason, by the way. I don't know if you guys remember this. This started in the early 2000s. This was by design. The ACC purposely started scheduling games at 7 or 8 at night, and all their primetime games are always that. That's the only chance they had to have rowdy fans in the stadium. And that's why they have more night games than anybody else, because of that. ACC football is awful. And so if you're covering ACC week to week and then you end up in Tallahassee, you're like, okay, this is like an SEC fan base. Or Clemson. By the way, another horrible fan base that's weak. I'm sorry. It's Miami's included in that. They're a powerhouse football program, but it's a boring place to go to a football game.
Oh, it's a great place to get stabbed when they were in the old Orange Bowl.
Which is more fun than the actual fans in the game. It's more fun than the actual cheering because the fans are just half of Miami fans are just, they love the U and the coolness of it, but they're not at the games every week.
No, and now the new stadium is 45 minutes away. It's the casino that doesn't have craps and takes 45 minutes to get a drink. But not that I'm mad about that. My trip in December. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the only fun game in the casino. And they don't have a sports book. But
right.
You have to get in the car 45 minutes to the stadium, and there's no tailgating. But that's Miami. Okay, here we go. Wisconsin Camp Randall Stadium is better than Neyland Stadium.
This is by design. Wisconsin has a tradition where there's one moment, and the jump around thing. That doesn't make the stadium as a whole better than Neyland Stadium. That's just a moment.
I agree. And I watched they did a vignette piece on that guy who is the lead singer of the Jump Around. Who is that?
House of Pain.
House of Pain. I love that song, by the way, and I love House of Pain. But they did a special on that guy during College Game Day, and boy, you talk about making you feel old when you see him. He is completely gray. I came to get up, I came to get down. So get up, and jump around. That does not make it better than Neyland Stadium. Camp Randall is not. Florida, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium is better than Neyland.
Florida, I can't get mad if you put the Swamp above Neyland.
I can't either.
Anybody who's been there, I think it's the design of the stadium, and I need some architect to talk to me about this, but it just gets uniquely loud at Florida for anybody that's been there.
I think it's that and LSU is the 2 toughest places to play, the 2 loudest, rowdiest stadiums. So.
We'll get to LSU in a minute because I have some thoughts because they're on here.
Okay, well, yeah, LSU, if they're not right up at the top, then this is a really stupid list. By the way, the Wisconsin thing is a pity vote. You're putting them up there basically because their program's not very good, and you say, yo, they got the jump around, so let's do this. Clemson. I mean, has the guy even been to a lot of these stadiums? I have been to Clemson.
Relative to if you cover ACC football.
Relative is a
Right.
good word.
If you end up at Clemson or Florida State after covering a Duke game or a UNC game or back in the day a Maryland game, and then you get to go cover a Clemson game. But I think Virginia Tech would honestly be in there too. Virginia Tech's the other one where they're pretty big on football in Blacksburg.
Mr. Jones said during the Tennessee-Bama game, there was an earthquake detected from the rumble of the stadium. Amen. A morgue is louder than Michigan. Amen.
Remember when Lou Holtz complained about the decibel level at Neyland?
I don't.
Yeah.
My memory of Lou Holtz is always getting cursed out by him. That's my one memory. You told me you were just going to be 8 minutes. And I said, I didn't tell you that. A producer must have told you that. I apologize that we went 12. It's people taking advantage of my time. If I'd have kept the record button, that's one thing I learned in that interview, keep the record button going. Alabama, Bryant-Denny Stadium, no chance.
No way.
No chance. You can't understand what Paul Bear Bryant is saying in the pregame. It's just gravelly. It's awful. You can't understand it. And they're starting to be a sit on their hands crowd like Tennessee was in the late 90s after winning a championship in the early 2000s. No, I'm sorry. It's not close.
No, it's not. They got to the 100,000 stadium mark a few years ago, but also the design of it, it's not going to – there's places where the sound to travel out. There's gaps in the stadium. So it's not – the sound's not trapped into the stadium. So it's going to leave – it's not that loud. It's more exciting than it used to be. Remember before they finished that upper deck on the other side, how like it was actually a quiet stadium up until that point. There's a reason they played their games in Birmingham for 60 years. They're big games.
No, I agree. Caleb's dog makes an appearance. Penn State, Beaver Stadium. Why? Because they wear all white?
That's the tradition is doing it. That's got to be it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing it could possibly be. Now, LSU is number one. Here are my thoughts based off not only the stadiums that I've been to, and I've been to most of the ones that we mentioned, but based off the stadiums that I've been to or talked to people. So, like, I'm going to give A&M a really good boost, even though I haven't been there because of people I talked to. To me, here's how I would do it in tiers. I think, to be quite frank with you, it's LSU and Florida are on the upper tier, and then right behind them would be the Ohio State's, Tennessee's, Neyland Stadium, and there's like 3 or 4 others that I would probably include in there. It would not be Alabama. It would not be Clemson. But it would not be Wisconsin. Would not be Florida State. But I would have A&M on that second tier, maybe even if I saw that in person on the first tier. But, Caleb, that's pretty much where I am in terms of stadiums. I think it's Florida, LSU, not just in the SEC, but in the nation. Now, Florida maybe takes a dip because their program hasn't been as good, but now this list is
You ready for my LSU hot take?
You got a hot take?
Tiger Stadium is massively overrated for one reason. Death Valley is only that loud at night. Guys, a 3:30 game at LSU is not as exciting or rambunctious as Neyland Stadium, and a noon game is definitely not. We saw Tennessee at Baton Rouge last year. Remember how lethargic that crowd was at noon?
When that time was announced, Caleb, that line should have moved by 6 points to Tennessee's way.
I agree. LSU fans are only exciting at night. Come at me, LSU fans. I'm waiting on it. You guys are I've been to an LSU game at noon. That was the Derek Dooley 13 men on the field game 13 years ago.
Oh.
There was nothing intimidating about you guys that day. Nothing. Okay, you're only intimidating at night after you've had a day of alcohol. You're hungover at noon, and you're usually hungover at 3:30 or 2:30 because you still haven't fully sobered up from the night before. So
it's so weird. It's so weird being at those games at LSU, more so than any other place, when you're stark sober, because obviously I didn't drink while I was covering the games, but you're walking by people that are either A, really hungover, or B, just getting sloshed, hammered. But LSU is right up there. Smoky Mountain Reds said Cajuns are not morning people. Well, maybe I've got some Cajun in me. Vassy Lawn and Garden, man alive, it's worth the drive. You love Vassy Lawn and Garden. Vassy Lawn and Garden has buying power that makes it worth the drive from Knoxville, Nashville, Chattanooga to get those industrial commercial mowers. Toro, count on it. It is phenomenal. So where would you have Tennessee? I would have Tennessee second tier, anywhere from 3, 4, or 5, right along with Texas A&M. And, the one that didn't make this list is Auburn. But I would have them right along the second tier with Texas A&M. I wouldn't have them any lower. I wouldn't have Neyland Stadium any lower than 5.
I would go number 2, specifically with the stadium, only to the Swamp. I'm going to add another point, though, too. As far as atmosphere as a whole, I put Neyland Stadium number 1. You can't beat the fall. The orange is synonymous with fall. The Smoky Mountains in the background, just like it gives you a fall feel that we all love about football, combined with the stadium. I mean, you get like a backdrop of the mountains when you're in the stadium, if you're on the right side of it. So that alone, do you get more of a football feel than being in Neyland Stadium anywhere else in the country?
A football feel,
like it's the best 3:30 atmosphere by far. It's number 1 for 3:30 to me. Now, Florida probably beats them at night, I would say, but I think Neyland Stadium has the best 3:30 atmosphere.
You get a party feel at LSU. You get a nouveau riche feel at Florida, which I think are tough places to play. No, it's right up there. I mean, I would say Alabama. I would say probably Ohio State, a football feel. I mean, they don't
get as loud as Neyland.
No, they don't. We're talking about kind of two different things. Coming up, Tennessee among 3 teams that could make the playoff for the first time. Who are the others? And we'll also have today's tough question brought to you by Craven Wings. A lot going on. I get to go to Craven Wings today. What about that, Juan Ward? Coming up, Tennessee could make the playoffs. Who are the other teams that could? And we're talking about the 4 team, not the 12 team. 2 minutes back off the Hook Sports.
And Craven Wings South North Shore location, where we've heard people say that you can get the best wings in East Tennessee. Pero ¿quién es este? El número 87, Jacob Warren.
I'll just do 6 of my sauce 87, please.
Imposible, señorita. Dale 6 más. Look at these wings. Perfectas, deliciosas, fantásticas.
Man, I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds awesome. How do you say fresh, never frozen in Spanish?
Frescas, nunca congeladas. Make your way to Craven Wings and get you 6 más.
But what was funny about Kate is we were a full continuum of care at that time. We had detox, we had inpatient, we had outpatient. So we were doing a lot of the things that we do now. But now we just do them so much better. It's really a simple program, but we're complicated people. I am what I am, and now I got to do something about it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Our family has been creating jewelry since 1986, each piece unique with a story all its own. I'm Rick Terry with Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. I'm a jeweler, and I want to be your jeweler. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler. My family and staff look forward to serving you. So please come see us. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut and downtown on Gay Street, right next to the Tennessee Theater.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Here we go. Welcome back. Smash the like button, John says. Thank you, John. And Tennessee is thought to make the college football playoff by one national writer. I'll dig into that. Are we all national writers now that we think about it, Caleb?
I mean, yeah, just like we studied media law. Just so you guys all know, New York Times v. Sullivan, we're all public figures nowadays. That actual malice thing you want to sue for defamation, you're going to have to prove it too. So just be careful.
Well, it's hard for us to sue other people, though, for malice or defamation because we've made ourselves public figures.
I know that, but what I mean is nowadays, public figure is so relative, everybody's one.
That's a good. I hadn't thought about that.
For the record, it was the college football case that determined that.
By the way, comm law for me, D equals diploma. That was the hardest class that I took. The only communications class that I didn't make an A in. Now, the first 2 years with all those prerequisites, crash and burn. Man, I hated them. Hated calculus too. Hated Spanish too. Hated all that. But when I got to the communications part as a senior or junior, I made great grades except for comm law. We had a list of 100 cases that we had to study, and she'd ask about 5 of them. We may have had the same teacher.
I had a different one because I took mine at a different school. But
okay, it was awful. But that's the only thing I take away from it.
It's tricky, and ours was what you ever had a class that was difficult, but you did well in, because even though it was difficult, the teacher made sure you would do well and made sure you learned the material. Like that was my comm law. It was a media law class for mine. But the public figure sentiment was a Bear Bryant versus Wally Butts case in Georgia in the 60s. I don't know if you know that one. They were accused of fixing games, and they sued the AP.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Spanish 2 was the class that I didn't know what I was doing, and I ended up doing okay. But my extra credit was flirting with the teacher a lot. I mean, that was a lot. I mean, that's the only way I was going to get through
Living up to the Hooker name.
I mean, that's all I had going. Well, that was my last semester. If I didn't pass Spanish 2, I wasn't going to graduate.
I hated Spanish. I'm with you. I hated it. Oh, I hated learning a new language. I understand it, like, because I had a dream for a little while to work in Miami, and I was a hypocrite. I didn't want to learn Spanish, but I wanted to work in Miami. Well, I'm sorry. If you want to work in Miami, you need to be bilingual. You just do. And
Coral Gables ain't a bad place. I was, is it Jim Laurinaitis? How do you pronounce his name? Who has taken Miami back to the Final Four? Took George Mason as well, but I saw an interview with him. He's like, it's being on a resort every day. I was like, that's kind of true.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if people remember this, but when LeBron went to Miami about 13 years ago, he did try. There were rumors that he tried to stay in Cleveland, but he was trying to get Chris Bosh to sign with Cleveland. And Chris Bosh was like, no, I'm signing with Miami. And everybody got mad at Chris Bosh thinking he's a diva. But I'm like, you get to live in Cleveland or you get to live in Miami. What are you picking if you're looking where to live?
Oh, yeah. Hey, let me ask. Hoghead brought up a great point because this is a big thing when I was Caleb's age. It said Neyland can be super great and it can be very dull. I've seen both many times. Now, in the late 90s and early 2000s, and to some extent in the mid 90s, when you thought to yourself, oh, Tennessee's going to get beat by Florida, I'll show up for the game, but they're not going to play for a championship. There were a ton of complaints about older fans like me now, older fans, older people that didn't want to stand up and they would tell you not to stand up.
With the portable radio headphones?
Yeah. Is that not a thing anymore for those that have been to Neyland lately? Is that still a thing? What is it?
I don't think that was a thing then. I mean, remember, one of the problems was that people forgot this was that for a long time, and Dave, you know this, until the SEC got that CBS deal and started inking the TV deals, there weren't that many night games in the SEC. You were stuck with a lot of noon and 3:30 games. And I think once they started inking those deals, that's when I think 96 was the first year they got that deal. In 97, there were a lot of 8 o'clock games. When Tennessee was winning the national title in 98, it was 3:30 every week. Because I actually tracked it one year. I think they played at 3:30 at the CBS primetime slot, like 7 of their 11 games that year. The year they won the national title.
I apologize for looking down at my phone. That's my pet peeve when people are on the air, but we're trying to line up a special guest. And I saw that my phone went off, and sure enough, it's somebody from New Hampshire, which means scam. And then another call that says scam likely. please get rid of my number. So is it at all the sitting on your hands crowd at Neyland Stadium anymore? I haven't seen any of that. I mean, as of last year, I didn't see any of that. I think that is no, I think that's antiquated.
I think it
anymore.
I think it was, from what I've heard, I wasn't there, but I know enough stories that the 98 Florida game was insanely loud.
The 98 Florida, yeah.
And I also know that the loudest Neyland Stadium I think ever registered was when Will Hoyt hit the field goal to beat Florida in 2004. And the loudest I ever heard it was when Jonathan Crompton threw what everybody thought was the game-winning touchdown pass to Robert Meacham against LSU in 2006. Remember that one?
Yes.
And that's the loudest I think I'd ever heard the stadium. And so I haven't heard another place that loud.
Well, mine would be 98. I mean, that was insane. And the crowd always got loud before Florida started winning. That was typically how things went. So, and by the way, somebody posting on our message board, do you think Bronny James is still considering Tennessee? I never said that. Did I say that?
No, it's I wrote about that at my old spot, funny enough. Rick Barnes is targeting Bronny James. And here's the other point. Look, LeBron's younger son is better than Bronny. Bronny's a 4-star caliber recruit. LeBron's the son behind him is actually the one that's got like LeBron level talent, if that makes sense. If Bronny is a one and done, it's only because of LeBron trying to force himself to play with his son 1 year, because Bronny is not a one and done prospect. He's got to develop a little bit more. He doesn't have LeBron's size, and it's going to ruin what we all say about sports if Bronny's a one and done prospect, because the beautiful thing about sports is it's the one area left in America. I've always said meritocracy is a myth, but sports is the one area where meritocracy exists, and it doesn't matter who your father is. If Bronny gets to the NBA after 1 year, he's a good player, but he's not a one and done prospect. If he becomes that, it's because of his dad, and it ruins the last vestige of meritocracy we have in this country.
The last vestige of a meritocracy. I wonder if one of the James sons coming to Tennessee would actually be bigger than Nico coming to Tennessee. Nico
Iamaleava. Tell you what, it'd be bigger than Buzz Peterson's roommate coaching or Michael Jordan's roommate coaching Tennessee.
Yeah, who didn't show up one darn time.
Yeah, LeBron would actually show up for the games.
My best friend's going to support me. All he has to do is show up because his name's Michael Jordan, and he doesn't show up one time. I'm sorry. I mean, Caleb, if you had something huge going on, and I consider you a friend and coworker, and I thought it could help you for me just to show up and say, hey, at your event, I would show up and say, hey, at your event. And Michael Jordan, I was the best man at his wedding, didn't show up one time for Buzz Peterson. All right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Tennessee, according to Heather Dinich, is among 3 teams that could make the playoff for the first time per ESPN. The other 2 that she pointed out, Southern California and Penn State. So I want to break this down and ask you, if you had to pick Tennessee or Southern Cal making the playoffs this year, which would it be? If you had to pick between the 2, they make the playoffs. Southern Cal was knocking at the door. So was Tennessee. Who would you take?
I'd take USC. I'm sorry, but they're playing in the Pac-12 and they got Caleb Williams back. How can you not take them over Tennessee?
I would definitely have to take USC as well. And you do have the returning Heisman winner coming back, and he should be a year better. So not to rain on anybody's parade, but I would take Tennessee. Now, the other program that was mentioned is a little bit more interesting and a bit surprising. So who was the other team that was mentioned, Caleb?
The other team was Penn State, and there's getting to be this disturbing love for Penn State.
So stupid.
Solely based on their Rose Bowl win. Dave, how many times have we seen teams be overvalued because they looked good in a bowl game going into the next year?
A lot. And Tennessee might be one of those teams, but it appears not because they lost Hendon Hooker. I don't think they're going to go into the season as the type of pick that fans want to make and be ahead of the curve. I think as a matter of fact, if you're jumping on Tennessee's bandwagon, you're behind the curve at this point. So Penn State, she mentions, Heather Dinich does, as a strong candidate to become first-time playoff participants. No.
They're not on. Does anybody think they're on Ohio State or Michigan's level yet?
No. And they never will be with James Franklin. Even if they get to the point where they have that type of talent, Caleb, they are not going to win the coaching battle. At the end of the day, James Franklin did a great job at Vanderbilt for what Vanderbilt is, but they played practically nobody. I think at one point they played Grace Christian
That was when the SEC East was at its absolute worst, too.
That too. So you had to pull off a couple of upsets against a down division, and you had to win your non-conference games, and you're good. But no, absolutely not. Penn State is not going to make the college football playoff. They are not going to be one of the top 4 teams when they go to the 12-team playoff. They're not going to get the bye. They're not going to do any of that. They play at Ohio State this year. They host Michigan. If Jim Harbaugh had gone, maybe we could make that argument. But I'll give you Southern Cal because they've got an easier schedule. Although Tennessee's is pretty easy, but they have a settled quarterback position. I'll give you that one. But to take Penn State over Tennessee makes absolutely no sense to me.
Not to mention, look, I think Michigan State could be better this year than they were last year, and they have to play at Michigan State this year. And that's a little bit scary for them, I think. Don't sleep on their opener against West Virginia with Neil Brown there. I mean, I'm with you. I don't see look, Penn State's very capable of losing either one of those games, quite honestly. And this has been a pet peeve of mine for a quarter century, for 25 years. I think teams get so overvalued by what they do in a bowl game. And I think you should, when you're projecting a team the next year, you should care about their bowl game way less than you should care about what they did in November the year before. Because bowl games are you got a month off. It's just so, some players opting out, whatever. Jamarcus Russell became a number 1 draft pick because he blew out Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. And that was ridiculous that he became that. Tennessee was number 3 heading into 2005. Why? Because of that Texas A&M game in the Cotton Bowl where Rick Clawson was Cotton Bowl MVP. That completely overvalued Tennessee heading into the 2005 season, that one game.
I'm with you. I don't understand the Penn State argument. I never will. To me, that is like one of those relationships where both sides kind of like each other, but they don't love each other. I don't feel like Penn State loves James Franklin. I think James Franklin, if he could become the head coach of the New York Jets, or he could get a bigger college coaching job, there's not a lot that he would do that. James Franklin is going to have a long, frustrating career like so many coaches in the Big Ten have had. And you can go Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. You could go a number of different coaches, and the fan bases, or at least the administrations, are okay with just winning 8 or 9 games.
Because the minute you want to fire them, they sneak in an 11-win season.
Right, exactly. Right when you're about to fire them. They're okay with the Butch Joneses of the world.
Yeah. Well, I think I remember covering Tennessee in 2017. And after that loss to Florida, remember that was the worst coach game ever, where Butch Jones threw it 3 times on the 1-yard line and Florida went up the Hail Mary and Butch Jones was like, we don't have a dime package. Remember that?
Yes. No.
And I remember that the next day, the Tennessee message boards, everybody was like, I want Tennessee to lose out. I want there to be no excuse to keep Butch Jones at this point. Vol fans were ready for a 3-9 or 4-8 season or whatever happened because they wanted no excuse for Butch Jones to hang around after that year. They were so angry at Butch Jones. And quite honestly, I think they were lucky. I think the worst thing that can happen to a program is when a bad coach sneaks in a 10-win season.
I agree. Post from the message board from Hoghead. I drove back from the 2002 Citrus Bowl and the 2016 Outback Bowl thinking we were going to be great the next year, and we were really bad both seasons. Any concern that could happen with Tennessee this upcoming year after a great showing in the Orange Bowl?
I think there is some overvaluing of Tennessee based on the Orange Bowl. I also think there's some overvaluing of Tennessee that we're doing, but that's based on default because we're looking at other programs in the SEC and thinking I mean, it's not based on the Orange Bowl performance. It's based on, even if Joe Milton is still like the erratic Joe Milton we saw before, you trust him to get through this schedule. I mean, it's just not that hard of a schedule. I don't think I don't think Tennessee gets to the playoff, but I think the schedule has them in competition for it.
Nope. I agree. So this an interesting take by Josh Pate, who I enjoy his program. I think he does a great job. I think he's a bit removed from the game in some sense, and I don't mean that to sound like a shot. I think that it's highly produced, but where does he have Tennessee? Not high at all. We'll discuss right after this. Give me 2 minutes. Off the Hook Sports. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
I know you like the heat. You got to try my signature sauce 87.
Dude, you know I love you and I love to try your wing sauce. When it comes to wings, I need them really hot. I hit 105 on the radar gun. I need to be pretty spicy.
Yeah, I know that, man. Look, if sauce 87 isn't enough for you, I guess you can try the Holy Moses or the Grim Reaper.
Now we're talking.
Take it from these Farragut Admirals. When you're craving wings, it's got to be Craven Wings. Visit them online at cravenwings.com.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Before Cadis, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Cadis has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Hey, Mr. Jones, I want to get to what you asked about. Do you see Tennessee trying to add another quarterback in the portal this next window that opens up to have a third option? So, yes. I mean, yeah, and it's not any indictment of Joe Milton III or Nico, but it is, simple fact is you're going into a season with two scholarship quarterbacks, unless you feel really, really good about Navy Schuler, right? I mean, I can't imagine Tennessee not having three scholarship quarterbacks on its roster. So we're going to pivot here just a little bit. I want to get to the Josh Pate stuff. I also want to get to the fact that Tennessee's recruiting a four-star quarterback, easy for me to say, that could commit to Tennessee tomorrow. But first, Caleb, we got a tweet from, is this Jimbo Fisher? What do we got from Jimbo Fisher?
We got a tweet from Lane Kiffin.
Oh, tweet from Lane Kiffin. Okay.
Yes.
I see a Jimbo Fisher picture. You get me caught up to date here.
So Jimbo Fisher showed his annoying ego again, where he said, and I get sick of coaches saying this, he said, everybody runs the same plays. It's all about execution when asked about the play calling, which whenever you hear a coach say execution, that's code for I did my job. Don't blame me, blame the players. I don't want to accept any blame.
That's true.
And Lane Kiffin, to his credit, can I share the screen real quick?
Sure. If you know how to do it, that's above my technical IQ. By the way, go ahead and smash that like button while Caleb's trying to figure out how to share the screen. Look at him. Sharing screens like there's no tomorrow. He's confident. He's smiling, feeling good about himself.
This is the tweet.
Well, you got to bring the screen. You got to bring the screen up. Do I have to do that?
Oh, wait.
I got it.
Oh, wait. Here we go. I got it. Okay, here we go. You see it?
I got it. I think I'm the one that did it, but it doesn't matter.
Yes. This everybody runs the same plays, question mark. It's only about the players executing, question mark, face palm at Kirby Smart. That sounds like he's taking a shot. That's a direct shot at Jimbo Fisher's quotes, right?
Yes. No, I don't think there's any question about it. And he references Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart doesn't run anything considerably difficult.
Right. Exactly. So I think I think Jimbo Fisher and Lane Kiffin have had a few wars of words. I think Lane Kiffin had some comments about NIL last year. And so we know Lane Kiffin ain't afraid to take shots. Here's the question. Was this fair or foul on Lane Kiffin? Should he be minding his own business, or is this him nearing the point that coaches should be held accountable? A good point to make.
Well, who am I? Am I the Ole Miss administration? Am I just Dave the commentator?
Dave the commentator.
Okay, Dave the commentator. This is golden. Way to go. I may text you. I might text him right now and say great job. But now if I'm the administration, Ole Miss, I'm probably not crazy about it. And Lane looks like he's kicking a wounded animal because Jimbo Fisher's on his way out. I mean, you do have to factor that in there as well. But the tweet in and of itself, to me, or the quote from Jimbo Fisher that everybody runs the same plays, that sounds like the best word I can come up with is ignoramus.
Yeah, so I pulled up the article, the direct quote. So he was asked if Bobby Petrino's scheme upgrades could help Texas A&M this year. And he goes, it's not scheme, it's execution. And then he goes, everybody does the same thing. There's not a hill of beans between anybody as far as what goes on.
That is just wrong. And that's the sign of a coach the game's passed him by. So feel better about that Texas A&M game.
Can you bet on who gets fired, on whether or not coaches get fired yet? Because I am so sure Jimbo Fisher's getting fired. Whatever the over-under is on wins this year, take the under with Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher is turning more and more into a disaster.
No, I agree. And he's aging like a dog, 7 years every year. Because he used to be innovative. Now he had James Winston, and that's why he won a national title. But if you want to talk about everybody runs the same plays, just take a second and watch what Georgia does and watch what Tennessee does. I mean, they're entirely different. Watch what Alabama will do this year and watch what they did last year and in previous years. That's just idiotic. I mean, it's absolutely idiotic to say that. And with Jimbo Fisher, he goes and hires a guy, Bobby Petrino, who was ahead of the curve 20 years ago before he couldn't take a curve on his Harley. And I mean, that's just not true. I mean, none of that's true. TCU, if they're running a pro style West Coast offense, whatever, they're not making the college football playoff. They're running stuff that's completely different. This to me almost sounds as stupid as Philip Fulmer hiring Dave Clawson, because Philip Fulmer didn't want to give up control. And he could have hired Will Muschamp, who was lighting it up as...
You mean Gus Malzahn?
Gus Malzahn, excuse me. Gus Malzahn, who was lighting it up as the offensive coordinator at Tulsa at the time, had the number one offense, but he went Dave Clawson instead. This hire is similar in a couple of different ways. I think that Jimbo Fisher knows that he can kind of control this offense because, let's face it, Bobby Petrino needs any break he can get at this stage in his career. And this is if I'm a Texas A&M fan, I'm completely disturbed by this. Can you imagine Josh Heupel says, well, everybody just pretty much runs the same place?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I also think there's a second method to Lane Kiffin's madness on this, because you covered him in that 2009 year. As boisterous as he was, that you always thought there was a bit of a method to his madness, right? And that he had. And I think that Lane Kiffin is sending a signal to Texas A&M players, hey, if you lose, he's going to blame you. Why don't you come to me?
I think he would have to have those conversations with them. I don't know that I necessarily would read it from the tweet, but yes, maybe that's the beginning of it. And yeah, I mean, that's something we talked about with Rick Barnes. You really can't say that because you can pull a quote and then say it's out of context if you want to. But the bottom line is, when you criticize your players, that's going to be what resonates. Listen, Lane Kiffin and Josh Heupel are ahead of the curve. And I don't know what Lane Kiffin's going to do next. I don't know what Josh Heupel is going to do next, because they've both shown throughout their careers that when things aren't working, they will adjust. And Caleb, based off that quote, everybody runs the same plays, and based off the hire of Bobby Petrino, if you're a Texas A&M fan, you've got to be throwing your hands up in the air. Are we ever going to do, is what I would be asking myself as an Aggies fan, are we ever going to do something different?
Yeah, this is a middle finger by Jimbo Fisher to A&M, basically saying, I still
and
got
their fans. And their fans.
Yeah. And he's basically saying, I've got y'all. First off, with the hire of Petrino, Fisher's making it very clear at this point, I don't care what you guys do. I'm going to do things my way, and I'm going to walk out of here with $85 million if you don't let me do things my way. So I win no matter what, and I really don't care at this point. It's very, very clear that's how he feels. By the way, his whole career has been inflated by one national championship, which he should know this firsthand. That Florida State Auburn national title game, Gus Malzahn massively outcoached Jimbo Fisher. Funny enough, we were just bringing up Gus Malzahn. Fisher just had Jameis Winston, and there were a couple of mistakes made at the end that led to the national title. Florida State was lucky to win that game. If a couple of plays go differently, Fisher's out of Florida State and never gets another job, and Gus Malzahn's probably still at Auburn at this point.
Here's the other thing about Fisher, too. You would like to think that he could be open-minded and go hire a guy like Garrett Riley, Lincoln Riley's brother, who's going to coach the spread and going to have wide splits. And there are some similarities with what Josh Heupel does. You would like to think he would do that like Clemson did. But even if he did, and Garrett Riley would know this going in, he's going to overlord it. He's going to everything you say, he's going to question it. He's not going to let you run your offense because he's an offensive coach. I think a lot of coaches knew that heading into the 2008 season after David Cutcliffe left, and Tennessee needed an offensive coordinator. I think that's why they settled on Dave Clawson. So Gus Malzahn may have very well turned it down because he was afraid he wouldn't be able to run his offense. So I think that one of two things, Jimbo Fisher either doesn't want to be innovative, so he didn't go out and hire an innovative guy like Garrett Riley, who I respect that hire by Dabo Swinney, who has been willing to turn his program over to coordinators. He either doesn't have that confidence to hand it over to somebody because he's an offensive coach, or a bunch of coaches in the college football community said, I'm not taking that because he's on his way out, and the best he could do was Bobby Petrino. He's day old bread. If we're having this conversation 20 years ago, Caleb, it's a different conversation.
Oh, I totally agree. I definitely think it's the latter. I think that, and you're right, this reminds me of, do you remember LSU basically all but fired Les Miles at the end of 2015, but then decided to bring him back for 2016, and Les Miles in his most defiant move ever, because they were firing him because they were tired of the offense being so basic and bland and him focusing on defense. And what does he do? He goes and hires Cam Cameron as offensive coordinator, a hire straight out of 2000. And he did that to be completely defiant to the LSU administration because he felt he wasn't getting the respect he deserves. Look, he should have won 2 national titles, but he was lucky to win 1 at the same time, because a 2-loss team getting in, and his selling point was, well, we never lost a game in regulation, and the voters bought that and voted him into the national title game.
Tim, Dewberry has become a content creator and maybe an associate producer on this show before long. Did you see his post on the message board? That is pure gold.
Fisher or Fulmer?
Who would you take, Fisher or Fulmer? And it's the same career.
Okay, I'll say this. Fulmer wasn't openly defiant when he made hires and trying to give the middle finger to the university. I think Fulmer was behind the times and got a little desperate at a certain point.
He was openly incompetent in the way he handled his personnel. Not only did he keep guys like Pat Washington and Larry Slade too long, but then, really, and David Cutcliffe fell in his lap.
He did find David Cutcliffe in the early 90s, though. I mean, that was a former hire from the 80s that he decided to just promote. I give him credit. And also, look, John Chavis was a coach for a time. And when Fulmer hired him, he was a coach for that time. And that was a real I don't know. Maybe that's just Fulmer promoting from within. And you're right. Maybe that's because after Cutcliffe, he hired Randy Sanders, who I think you and I both agree is not an offensive coordinator.
Well, you're talking to the guy who, before the 2005 season, sat down with him and his dad at a Cracker Barrel in I believe, Athens, Tennessee, and wrote the story about how he would probably be the next head coach of the Vols. So you're probably talking to the wrong guy. I mean, he looked like the fair-haired young coach who would take over for Philip Fulmer. Yeah, but Tim's throwing heat. If you had to take Philip Fulmer and knowing what we know to head your program, Calhoun University.
Fulmer, I would go.
Wait, let me set it up.
Today's tough.
This is a good one.
It's a great one.
Stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Brought to you by Craven Wings. Best wings in town. It ain't close. I'm going there today. I'm fired up. Jacob Warren says they're great. I'm going to try Sauce 87. I was going to go a totally different direction. And you can fill out that as well. It's on our Twitter account. But that was going to be with Hendon Hooker flying up the draft charts. What player did you most root for after his Tennessee career? So give me some of those too, if you don't care. Because every time you get ahead of today's tough question, like the night before, which I did, then something better comes up the next day. You're better off just flying by the seat of your pants sometimes. So, Fulmer or Fisher? Calhoun University opens tomorrow. You can take either in their prime.
This is like remember how so many people felt about the 2016 election when they're like, we got to vote for one of these candidates? I don't like to get political, but it's like, that's how I feel with Fulmer and Fisher. Fulmer or...
Okay, let me give you a thumbnail sketch. And I covered Philip, so I know him way better than Jimbo. I have coaches who had a special season. It was because of Tennessee's defense and Al Wilson that Tennessee won a national championship. Jimbo Fisher is because Jameis Winston. And
Jeremy Pruitt running the defense.
When he was having girlfriends. But so he had a full plate. All right, so
was asparagus on that plate? Because he wouldn't have known what that is.
Some backstory to that I'll get to at some point. So, man, you're in the state of Florida. Okay, and thumbnail sketch. Let me finish this before I get sidetracked in my brain. Thumbnail sketch. Both, I think, lack discipline throughout their careers. I mean, a lot of people forget that Philip Fulmer in today's day and age would have been fired for what he did. He met with a young lady who alleged sexual assault against a player, and he met with her along with his attorney at a Shoney's the next day. That would have been tampering with a witness. You would have been fired. Boom, on the spot.
I mean, in some states, you would be arrested for that.
Yes. So, and I thought that clearly Jimbo Fisher looked the other way when he knew more stuff about Jameis Winston. I will take, if I had to start my university tomorrow, I will take Philip Fulmer because of one reason, and that is a considerably better recruiter than Jimbo Fisher. I think Jimbo Fisher has recruited well at A&M. I thought he recruited well at Florida State before he let things go off the rails. He didn't care about Florida State. They didn't have an offensive lineman that could play when he left. So I will take Fulmer. Recruiting at a place like Tennessee is more difficult than Florida State or Texas A&M. So I would take Fulmer to start Calhoun University tomorrow. But man, you could talk me out of it.
I'm going to go the other way, and here's why I'm going to go the other way. I think it's known at this point. I talked about it a few weeks ago. You have the book Orange Crush. I read it in that book, funny enough. But it's known that there are two different Philip Fulmers that coach Tennessee. The Fulmer of the 90s up until about 99 was a very hands-on coach. Very, very hands-on with the players, very involved. And the Fulmer that I think when you started covering with Knox News was I want to be a CEO and just almost Joe Bertoner. I don't really want to work too hard. I just want to go meet with the boosters and things and let the staff do their job. And that's that Fulmer, I would take Jimbo Fisher over. Because at least Jimbo Fisher seems like he wants to be involved with the team. Whereas Fulmer, the second half of his career, a guy who just wants to sit around and be a CEO, that never works with coaching. Yes, Dabo was a CEO, but Dabo is hands-on as a CEO. He's always thinking of ways to get an edge.
Well, I guarantee he's dogging it in recruiting like Philip did.
Yes, exactly.
Still to this day, I think that people don't understand how important recruiting was and why Philip Fulmer was such a perfect fit for Tennessee. Philip would sometimes leave when Vanderbilt and Kentucky were terrible. He would leave during practice and go make recruiting phone calls. I mean, that was not unusual, and it sounds crazy, but it was actually very smart. Because he knew that they were going to show up and beat Kentucky and Vanderbilt. In those days, they had a 22-game winning streak against each of them. You knew you were going to win.
Yeah. The only time either was a threat was, by the way, you saying that explains why in the mid-90s, Tennessee always struggled with Vanderbilt on that stuff.
They did. And their players didn't want to be there. I mean, for goodness sake, I didn't want to be at practice because it was freezing cold and they were playing at Vanderbilt, Kentucky. Travis says Fulmer put incredible players, incredible into the league. Jimbo has James Winston.
Well, that's the thing. Fulmer's staff developed players. I never took that away. I mean, you were going to be developed, unless you were a defensive back, as you talked about. Unless you played in the secondary, you were going to be developed for the NFL if you went to Tennessee. And I think I give him that.
I just know more good and bad about Philip, so it's probably hard for me to compare the two, honestly. And frankly, because I could throw up bad things about Philip that would make me want to say Jimbo, and I could throw up good things that would make me want to say Philip. So
there's one thing that's going to make me say Jimbo, and it's this. Me covering Tennessee in 2006. I don't think Jimbo would ever say this. When Tennessee had the worst run blocking in the SEC that year, they couldn't buy 3 yards when they ran it. Remember that? The 06 team. Mm-hmm. And Fulmer in November says, I'm going to start working with some of the offensive linemen to help them get a little better. And in my mind, I'm like, you're a former offensive lineman and a head coach. And
I know we don't have the SEC, but I hate cursing on the air, and I almost slipped. Why? Why were you already working with the offensive line?
Yeah. Why wasn't he already doing it?
What were you doing previously?
Exactly. I think Jimbo would never say that about a quarterback. He would never be like, my quarterback's struggling right now, so I'm going to spend some time working with my quarterback. Could you imagine if Jimbo Fisher said that?
Tim says, let me see if I can get a buyout from Basilio and come to work for you guys. I didn't know you were working for Basilio, but I'll tell you what, the key in media nowadays is have a bunch of different paychecks. You got to be hustling. You got to keep them coming in, or you get frustrated by being underpaid in the media. So work for us both. And tell Tony I said hello. Great guy.
Or be Jimbo Fisher and get an $85 million contract and not care if you win. And so
Gene says Dave has too much inside knowledge about the skeletons in Fulmer's closet to be objective. You're right. I'm going to let you pick for Calhoun University, and I'm going
to go Jimbo because I think Jimbo is more hands-on. That's where I'm going to go with that. And I think that's a negative, his hands-on, because he's defiant. But I just think Fulmer was as hard as people say he worked in recruiting, and I believe you. I mean, that you know some good about Fulmer too that a lot of people don't know.
I do. That's why I could talk myself either way.
Yeah, but I will say I know I don't want to say I know for a fact because I can't say that, but I know based on a lot of circumstantial evidence that Fulmer got pretty lazy the last few years at Tennessee, and he was kind of lazy as an athletic director too.
Yeah, it's a grind. I don't see how these guys do it long-term in recruiting. I feel a real sense of empathy for them. I mean, you're still making $2-3 million even back then. So not too much empathy, not sympathy, but empathy. But Gene, you're right. But I know so much good about Fulmer too. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two coaches. Why should you be concerned about a young man that we reference a lot on the program just to be a freshman, Nico
Iamaleava.
Coming up, and it's brought to you by Craft Treats. Craft Treats, go there right now, crafttreats.com, get the chill pills, and the chill pills will help with your pet's anxiety. They'll help with your pet's arthritis issues, which my dog has. He can jump on the bed now. He couldn't before. Also digestive issues because they've got the CBD infused pet treats right there. Crafttreats.com. Use the promo code Off the Hook. That's the promo code Off the Hook, and you will get 20% off. Already had a ton of feedback of people that love it. So 2 minutes why you should be slightly concerned or not about Nico Iamaleava's progress. Stay tuned. It's a big one because there's a big announcement coming up on Thursday that could affect Tennessee's quarterback future and quarterback room in the very, very near future. Hang tight 2 minutes.
To own the more that owns every job, then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We are grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
What's up, everybody? This is University of Tennessee tight end Jacob Warren, proud to announce that I'll be working with Craven Wings again this season. And I want you to give your all and try my signature sauce, Sauce 87, at either of the Craven Wings 2 locations, Chapman Highway in Seymour and South North Shore Drive at the Markets of Choto. When you're craving wings, it's gotta be Craven Wings. Online at cravenwings.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Here we go. Welcome back. portions of the program brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. If you're in Knoxville and you ever need an HVAC service, it's City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. You will love them. Check them out. cityheatandair.com. They bring you Cooper Mays, who is just throwing heat. And I asked him, I said, what do you get asked about spring practice most of the time on our YouTube channel? Please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already. And he said that I got to ask about the quarterbacks, the running backs, the receivers, anybody but the offensive line because we're boring. That seems about right. By the way, I noticed, hey, if you want me to be brutally honest with you, at maybe the detriment to our own growth on the YouTube message board, I will. So there were a couple of, I think they were Alabama fans that I made mad. So we lost a couple of subscribers. So we need you to tell friends so we get those subscribers back.
I was wondering, we hit 1,900.
I'm just brutally honest. I'm like, man, at this point in my career, I'm going to tell you what I think. And somebody was saying Nick Saban has already said that he wasn't referring to Alabama's basketball program when he said there's no such thing as wrong place, wrong time. I essentially, to sum it up, said, if you believe that, then you're an idiot. Because he was totally referring to that, was he not?
Yes. Like, what Nick Saban said it, and he's not lying at all. He would always tell you exactly what he was thinking, and he wouldn't pretend at all because that's what coaches do.
Yes. Okay. Speaking of what coaches do. All right. Tennessee, and I wrote about this on offthehooksports.com, which we encourage you to check out. Kudos to Caleb Giroux, who is just throwing heat with his recruiting coverage. So Tennessee, we're trying to get Steve Wiltfong on. I think we may be able to. Okay, we're trying to get Steve Wiltfong on, who works with 247 Sports, and man, I'll give him credit. He's kind of like a young Dave Hooker. Everything he says about recruiting happens. I'm joking. But he thinks that a young man named Jake Merklinger from Calvary Day School will commit to Tennessee. And his crystal ball projections have been on the money. I think right now he's at the top of his recruiting game. And that's not easy to do, quite frankly, because the national guys, the more regionalized you get, the tougher it is. So Merklinger also considering North Carolina, Georgia, and Michigan State. Now you have Nico Iamaleava. Man, see, I'm still struggling with that. So until I get it right, Iamaleava. So why are you recruiting another quarterback, Caleb?
I think still this day and age in college football, you want at least two options heading into any season. And unless you think Gaston Moore or Navy Schuler is one of those options, I think you're going to need another quarterback next year. I watched some Jake Merklinger highlights. You ready for this? You ready for this, Dave? Ready for my hot take?
If you say he's better than Nico, then yes, that's an incredibly hot take.
I say he's a better NFL prospect than Nico. Nico's better than for Heupel's system.
I agree with that. Yeah, I watched him too.
Yeah, Nico has a quicker release and a more accurate deep ball. Jake Merklinger is better at throwing the ball with somebody in his face. He can take a hit and throw it. He can make more throws than Nico. And they're about the same level of mobility, I think. So, but again, the most important things in Heupel's system is an accurate deep ball and a quick release.
No. And Travis, I'm having fun with Nico's name. I definitely know how to pronounce it. I just pronounce it like this.
Iamaleava.
Iamaleava. I got it. Iamaleava. And then there's a Tagovailoa guy. No. Iamaleava. So does this give any credence to Dennis Dodd's report from CBS Sports?
No.
Okay, well, let me finish.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were. Yeah.
That's all right. Does this give any credence that there are whispers he's not living up to the hype talking about Nico? Any credence at all?
No, absolutely not. There is, if Joe Milton were coming back next year in like 2024, you might have a point there, but Tennessee is only going to have one quarterback on the roster next year that you would think could be elite enough to run Josh Heupel's offense. And that quarterback would be Nico Go ahead and hit it.
Well, I switched.
Iamaleava.
Iamaleava.
So I don't think you have to sign a quarterback every class like you used to, but I think you need at least 2 options on every roster, and I think that there's a healthy difference between what Philip Fulmer did, which was put all of his eggs in one quarterback. Like whenever a quarterback left, and he got lucky with T. Martin here because there was no backup to T. Martin in '98, but he did not get lucky with Jonathan Crompton. And so that's not Crompton's fault. I'm going to be fair to Crompton. There were some other issues there that we all know about. But either way, Fulmer had a habit of putting all his eggs in one quarterback's basket. And I think that there's a difference between that and having to sign a quarterback every year. You at least need 2. Come on, you need 2. Just for injury's sake, you need 2.
All right, here we go. 4 downs. And it's brought to you by our friends at Craven Wings, where I will be going with the hottest sauce they have. It's going to light me up. 4 downs. Nico, should it be concerned? What does this mean? Tennessee with another rooster in the hen house or hen in the rooster house. 4 downs.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, if you're Nico Iamaleava, are you at all frustrated or concerned that Tennessee, just months after you arrived on campus, is going after another quarterback?
No. If you have any, like the slightest bit of intangibles at all, you aren't scared of competition. You know this is what happens. You should have been dealing with competition since you were in middle school.
Agreed. Do you think it's something they talked to Nico about? Do they say, hey, we're going to have to bring in another cat? Just want you to know.
I think that's something they were honest with him when they were recruiting him. I think they had to because of the NIL money. I think they had to talk to him and to some boosters to say, look, whoever gave him the money, to say, look, we're not going to not bring in another quarterback.
Okay. Well, let's say that Merklinger commits to Tennessee, and this is a commitment. This is a non-binding commitment. Okay. So Nico could light it up this year, shove Joe Milton to the bench, and Merklinger could say, whoa, I'm not going there. So that could happen. But aside from that, do you think that Nico and Merklinger will both be on Tennessee's roster, not 2024, but 2025?
No, I think Merklinger will transfer. I mean, again, to be fair to Nico, for people who are questioning if he'd be upset about this, he committed to Tennessee when Taven Jackson was already on the roster, and that was a Heupel commitment. So he's not going to back off because another commitment came after him.
Okay, so that was 2nd down. 3rd down, is it fair to treat these players differently now that they're getting paid and can transfer freely? Because I will tell you this, I reached out to one former Tennessee quarterback. Maybe you said his name, maybe you didn't. But just to talk about how do those things go down? What's that conversation like? You might not be a fit. We got this Nico guy coming in or whatever. And he didn't want to talk about it. But I believe that Tennessee, along with a bunch of other schools, are showing guys the door, which used to be a cardinal sin in football. Do you believe that's okay now that they're getting paid and they can transfer freely?
I do believe that's okay, but I think the institution should step in and say this. I would actually take a really hot take. And you ready for this?
I'm ready.
I think the school should be required to honor scholarships. Now, if the player wants to transfer, that's their own risk at that point. But I think they should be required to honor the scholarships for 4 years.
If they enter the transfer portal?
No. I think once you enter, it's over. But I think if you commit and accept the scholarship offer, I think as provided you live up to like certain standards, I think scholarships are year by year, aren't they?
On the kids side, they are.
Yes.
And now they are. I'm sorry. Now they are on the school side because you can transfer.
Yes, I think right. So what I mean, if a kid accepts a scholarship as a freshman and decides to stay with the school has to honor the scholarship all 4 years they're there, right?
No, the school, it's year to year.
Okay, that's what I mean. I think the school should be required to honor the scholarship unless the kid enters the portal for 4 years. For 4 years, unless the kid enters the portal or unless the kid violates some code of conduct that the school is allowed to set.
Yeah, it used to be these were called medical red shirts. They'd find a reason to put you, not a medical red shirt, medical scholarship. They would put you on a medical scholarship. So basically, if you showed up and you couldn't play, they would put you on a medical, and it didn't count against your 85.
So you
They don't really do that anymore. They just say hit the door.
Right.
So, what are the odds? Okay, what percentage of chance do you believe that Merklinger will start more games at Tennessee than Nico Iamaleava? Iamaleava.
That depends on how many years Merklinger wants to sit, because Nico's going to be there at least 2 years after this year.
What makes it difficult.
I agree, but here's the thing. You could redshirt if you're Merklinger, and then you could sit behind Iamaleava. You sit for 2 years. You still have 3 years of eligibility. So,
but I don't think anybody sits now.
I don't. They do. Joe Milton is willing to sit. Joe Milton.
I think that's a rarity.
I think if
Merklinger shows up on campus and sits behind Nico for 2 years,
Dave, if your son committed and was sitting behind Nico for 2 years, would you encourage your son to keep transferring until he found a place to start immediately? Or would you encourage, like, hey, you have a leg up if you just wait patiently and learn the offense in a couple of years?
Well, that's a tough one. If I watched him out there and I thought he couldn't compete, but you're not going to be objective with your own son. So
if you knew your son could compete, your son's a 4-star, 5-star quarterback.
And yes, I might be butchering Nico's name throughout the season, post on the message board because I think it's kind of funny. I view this as a job now. So if my son was miserable at a job, I'd view go get another job.
What if he's happy and he's just developing and waiting for his chance to start, though?
If he's happy, then stay by all means. If you're happy at a position and you're waiting for the managerial role to open up, stay. But if you're at all not happy, I've taken the sentiment out of it. If this answers your question, be loyal to that school. No, that school is a business nowadays. It was before.
I'm just very much. And I say it's funny you say managerial role. I think to take it to coaching, for instance, I think coordinators are too happy to take the first head coaching offer they get. And one, they may not be ready, and two, it could be a bad job. And I think that's where Kirby Smart was smart. He just stayed at Alabama, developed more and more, and then he got the best job in the world, and he was ready. Meanwhile, Derek Dooley jumped the first chance he got, and he wasn't ready to be a head coach.
No, and I think but here's the thing. I think that we've all probably taken jobs that weren't what they cracked up to be. So if you find that out and you're not under contract, and then I have no problem with you moving and bolting.
I think Merklinger is not going. So to answer this question, I think Merklinger won't start more games than Nico. I think it's about a 30% chance he does, because I think if he were to commit, I think Nico is still starting in 2024 and 2025. And then I think Merklinger would obviously start in 2026, but you would have to bet on him starting in 2026 and then deciding to come back if he's good and starting in 2027. So I think that, but I don't think Merklinger is going to transfer if he doesn't win the job. I don't. I think this is a thing for him where I'll compete for the job. And if I don't win it, I can sit in Josh Heupel's offense for 2 years, learn the offense, redshirt 1 year, have 3 years of eligibility, and then shine.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's not like it used to be, Caleb. I mean, Josh Heupel's going to go out and try to get another 5-star guy in 2 years.
And at that point, Merklinger should transfer then. I think, look, Taven Jackson didn't transfer until Nico arrived in December, and that's when Taven Jackson realized, I'm not going to beat this guy out. And so that's why he transferred. But I think he'll embrace competition at the start. I do. I think that's what you do. You embrace the competition for the guys that are level with you or behind you. Nico's not level. Nico's going to be ahead of you. So I still think the concept of embracing competition and waiting your turn to start is going to exist in some places in college football, particularly a school like Heupel, where would you rather go somewhere else to start early, or would you rather wait 2 years and then you have a chance to start in Heupel's system? And his system is designed for you to put up 400 yards and 5 touchdowns a game.
Yep. Jaden Davis is another one that may sign with Michigan or Louisville. We've heard all kinds of of places that he could go. But I think Merklinger is the guy that eventually ends up at Tennessee, and that'll be tomorrow. My thoughts on this, I would have kept Nico in the loop. If Nico has a problem with it, too bad. You have a year head start. Sorry.
Given the job, you shouldn't be the starter.
I agree with what you said. Merklinger may be a better pro style guy, but Nico is the perfect fit for Josh Heupel's offense. I will go so far as to say this. I think based off Nico's ability, that Merklinger will stay 1 year at Tennessee and he'll be gone by January of 2025. I don't think he'll stick because I don't think kids do that. So I'm going to take the popular route. You might be right. He might just love Tennessee, wore orange pajamas when he was a child. I don't know.
Or just relish a chance to play in Heupel's system, even if he has to wait.
Possible. But I think Heupel, if he's not up to that standard and Heupel goes out and gets another war daddy like Nico, I think that he could quickly run Merklinger, or Merklinger could just go.
He might get a better quarterback. He's never getting another Nico. I'm just going to say it.
Maybe, but as far as being worried about Nico and his performance and the whole Dennis Dodd situation, no, I don't think going out and getting another quarterback should worry Tennessee fans at all. I will say this: I would make sure that Nico was in on that discussion. Not that you have to be. I remember a coach saying to me, as soon as they sign that letter of intent and send it in, they go from prospect to suspect, because not from a legal sense, but you suspect whether or not they can play and they've got to prove it. So at that point, when you have them not as strong with the transfer portal, I agree, but when you have them signed up, you have some leverage over them that you didn't have before they signed. They have leverage over Nico now. And if he doesn't like another guy coming in a year behind him, then I don't think that says a lot for him. And I don't believe that is even remotely going to be the case. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Download the app, turn your notifications on. We've got great stuff coming up, including maybe that Celebrate 98, which is close to coming. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the